At Augusta National, you don't just watch the Masters, you hear it. The soft piano of a familiar theme floating across a spring afternoon. The quiet murmur of patrons moving beneath the pines. And then, a distant roar at Amen Corner, rising just enough. Never overwhelming, never out of place. Because Augusta does not shout. It moves like a melody. Deliberate, measured, timeless. In this place, sound becomes memory. A note, a name, a moment that stays with you. Today, we explore the voices, the music, and the stories behind the sound of Augusta. McConnell Golf presents ROAD to Augusta. Here's your host, Ward Clayton.
We're here today with golf writing, golf photography, everything golf legend Bill Fields. And Bill and I go way back to Chapel Hill when we were in school together and so forth. And Bill grew up in Southern Pines. I remember way back when, coming from Durham to go to Southern Pines, it felt like it was a day trip. It took forever. And now you can just hop on the interstate and get down there pretty quickly. It was like you're going to a mirage in the desert. It's still a little bit that way in Moore County, which is very rural until you get into Pinehurst and so forth. But it's really just grown exponentially during that time. What was it? Give me a sense for what it was like growing up in that golf-centric area.
Well, thanks for having me, Ward. Yeah, as you say, we do go way back, and yeah, it was great to grow up in the Southern Pinehurst area when I did in the 60s and 70s. It was much sleepier than it is now. I described it in the past as a kind of like a sophisticated Mayberry because we had an influx of people from the north, who had retired there, or who were working there in some of the resorts. And it just really was a little different from many small southern towns because of the influx of people from the north and all the golf. It was a different kind of place.
How has that changed in the time you're growing up to what it is now?
Well, just the sheer number of commercial establishments, the sheer number of residents. I don't have the figures at my fingertips, but just the population of Moore County, and particularly Southern Pines, Pinehurst, and Aberdeen, have really grown a lot. COVID had something to do with it. People that realized they could work anywhere remotely. Well, are you going to live somewhere you might not really want to live, or can you move to a beautiful place and have a bunch of golf courses and pretty territory out your back window? So that was a big factor. Real estate prices have soared there, as they have many places. It's a different vibe now, but fortunately, some of the core areas remain the same. The golf courses are wonderful. As you know, some of them have been restored and upgraded in recent years, like Mid Pines and Southern Pines Golf Club. They're terrific. It's not a secret anymore. Not that it ever was, but many people have discovered it, and you just try to get on the tee sheets at some of the golf courses during peak season or even out of peak season, and it's not easy now.
Okay, Bill, I'm a tourist. I'm coming to Pinehurst for the first time. Give me your top 3 golf courses that you want to play there. It doesn't have to be the best. It's your favorites. What are your 3?
I mean, and no offense to the Pinehurst resort courses, which are fabulous. I have a sentimental attachment to Pinehurst number 1 because that's where my high school golf team usually played in the mid and late 70s. And I really enjoyed going back to number 1 and playing. Pine Needles, Mid Pines, and Southern Pines Golf Club are just tremendous. You could play those courses day after day after day and never get tired of them, or at least I wouldn't. I think they're fantastic.
Okay, same scale here. I'm coming for the first time. What are the 3 places I've got to go eat?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't live there. I do visit sometimes. My knowledge is a little limited, probably. I like Indian food, and there's a really nice Indian restaurant downtown Southern Pines now called Jaya's. That's a must go for me when I'm in town. Usually, there's a couple of restaurants across the street from one another on New Hampshire Avenue, Chapman's and Ashton's. They're terrific. There's so many options in Southern Pinehurst, Aberdeen now that there didn't used to be. There's a Guatemalan restaurant that's terrific in Aberdeen. There's Thai. There's a really good Thai place that's been around for years called Thai Orchid. That's a solid place and has been for years. It's in the site, by the way, of an old Pizza Hut where we would go in high school when we had senior lunch privileges and eat the pizza and salad buffet for $2.99. So yeah, I go way back down there.
Being in high school, there wasn't a lot of salad, but there was a lot of mostly pizza, right?
No, we would debate over the mushroom slices or the pepperoni slices, and usually get both.
Yeah, I agree. Well, you're a great tourism guy. That's fantastic. So growing up there, Bill, you were attracted by golf. I'm sure other people were too. Is that difficult to not play golf there if you grew up there? I mean, you're just right out your back door just about everywhere you go.
Yeah, interesting that I did not come from a golf family. I got my dad into golf rather than the common scenario going the other way. Many people in the area when I was growing up did not play golf. There were a lot of, blue collar folks, working in factories or on farms or wherever, they did not play. It was not a given that would play golf if you were born there, despite, as you say, so many golf courses and, you can't help but see them. I as a boy, was intrigued by it and got into it and became a love of mine. But no, in those years, everybody did not play. It was not it was not like, okay, you grew up here, you're going to play golf. That was not the case.
Wow. Okay. All right. So why were you so infatuated with writing and photography? For folks watching here, Bill's got the unusual distinction that he's both written about the professional game at the highest level, but he's also been a photographer at the highest level. Which came first, and why did they were attractive to each other?
Well, the writing came first. I certainly had a couple of cameras as a kid and teenager, but never was really into it. But really, Golf World, in my first turn there in the mid 80s, it was a small operation. It was then based in Southern Pines. Of course, it had started out in Pinehurst in 1947, founded by Bob Harlow. But in those years, if you got hired as a writer or an associate editor, as I did in 1984, and you were expected to learn how to do sports photography, golf photography, shoot tournaments. And I can remember the magazine had a limited array of equipment. Fortunately, at that point, we did not have to develop our own color slide film. That had finally been outsourced to a local lab in town. A couple of guys that were great friends of mine, Don McKenzie and Glenn Dickerson. Sadly, Glenn has passed away. But, I was kind of learned on the job, and I was really into it as my predecessor and good friend Jim Moriarty had gotten into photography. He had been a sports writer in South Bend, Indiana, and had gotten a job in 1979 as an associate editor. And Jim really embraced the photo side of things, as I did subsequently. And yeah, it was learning by doing, for sure. My first Masters that I shot was '85, Bernard Longer in the all red outfit, and I got some decent pictures that day. But boy, it was definitely learn on the job.
Since this show is called The Road to Augusta, you don't get a chance to ask somebody this very much. What's the difference between writing at the Masters and shooting photography at the Masters? And did you do both in the same year?
No, I never did both in the same year, really. There were some majors like U.S. Women's Opens that I would photograph and write the game story for Golf World in the 80s. But the Masters, I just shot it a couple times for Golf World before moving on to Golf Illustrated. And I was credentialed as a photographer the first 11 Masters that I covered. And then all the ones since have been as a writer. But, well, as you know, from directing the sports team at Augusta Paper, and the photographers have to be out there. You have to be out on the course. You can cover the Masters from the press room, but you can't do that obviously as a photographer. And it's a very physical activity. It perhaps is the only sport where the photographers exert as much energy as the athletes, because or more, right? Yeah. Because it's not so much Augusta, but there are courses where tournaments are played now. I can think of the one that the LPGA plays in Naples. My goodness, some of the green to tee travels. It's incredible how long those trips are, because it was built around real estate and water hazards and everything. But no, you definitely, when you finished a day of photographing at the Masters or other majors, you were tired. It was a lot of effort.
Well, I suspect being a photographer at the Masters is difficult because you really have to climb up and down those hills. And as you well know, a lot of our brethren in the press building, they don't see the golf course. So,
Yeah, sadly, because I just think back to this past Masters, with Rory. I mean, I went out, Sunday and walked a handful of holes just to get a sense of it. And then it's hard to see and keep up with stuff, but you got to get out there and watch a little bit. And of course, Thursday, Friday, most everybody gets out and wanders around. And yeah, you should get out definitely and see it for yourself.
no doubt. So, do you have any particular great stories about being a photographer at Augusta? Any great angle, great shot you got, or something that happened during the course of the day? Anything of that nature?
Well, I mean, to be there, the photograph behind me is from Jack finishing up in '86, and I'm a dark-haired mid-20s guy crouched on behind the green there. So that was an unbelievable day, as anyone was there can testify. The fact that he won that the way he did with all the great young players that were around him challenging Jack. That was a terrific and memorable day. The next year, Larry Mize chipping in. I was, of course, the only photographer to get a nice sequence of Larry chipping in on number 11, but the light was golden, and it was a really beautiful sequence, of photos there that I got. I'm proud of. Crenshaw winning in '95. That would have been my last Masters that I worked as a photographer. Ben winning, the great Harvey Pinnock tie-in, after he passed that week. I mean, that was a cool week as well.
No doubt. I agree. So your perspective is awesome because, we talk to writers who've been doing this a long time, but we never talked to somebody who's done both. So your perspective is great because that's hard work. I know those guys that work with us at the Chronicle and work with us at masters.com, that, you got to be in shape to go do that. That's really quite a task.
Yeah, it's a very physical thing, and the Masters, of course, distinct from the other majors or any other tournament, it does not allow the inside the ropes access that you get at these other places, and that makes it a real challenge to try to, find spots to work in and get an angle for a shot. It's the first time a photographer comes there, and even though however skilled he or she might be, it's a challenge and it takes some getting used to. And, everybody's got stories of weaving into crowds trying to, the fans are polite at Augusta, but yeah, I mean, nobody wants to, you don't try to block anybody's view, but when push comes to shove, you got to try to get to position. And I think if you get a good shot at the Masters, you're proud of it because usually there was a little extra effort to make it happen.
No doubt, no doubt. So, sort of give everybody the breadth of your attendance at the Masters. What's the first one you went to?
The first one I attended in any form was went down in 1982 for a practice round. Unfortunately, it was just total washout. I remember going with a friend. We went to a diner type place that was in one of the shopping centers across the Washington Road from the club, and just kind of tried to wait it out. But as I recall, we never even got into the grounds that day. 1985 was my first year as a credentialed media member when Longer won, and I've only missed 1 year since. In 2002, I didn't go because I was working on a long feature about all the other towns named Augusta, and I went to several of them that week. So that's the only one that I haven't been to since 1985, it's really been fun.
So that story, I read a portion of that, and the one you went to in Iowa. What was the name of the body of water that was on
the Skunk River, the anti-Race Creek.
Can you imagine that if Augusta had Skunk Creek, they probably would have changed the name, I would suspect, right?
Yeah, that was wild. I just kind of showed up, and it was literally just like a crossroads in Iowa, and there was a tavern / general store open, and I went in there. It was midday, and some guys in there, and I convinced them I bought them a beer, and they came down to the river and posed for a picture by the sign. It was pretty funny. And the other two I went to that week, in addition to making a lot of phone calls, and a colleague of mine, Michael Arkush, also pitched in with some phone reporting for me. But I went to Augusta, Illinois, which was down southern Illinois, and Augusta, Kansas, which was where I was on the Masters Sunday, and that was sort of a suburb of Wichita. And there was actually, they played a tournament there on Sunday, so that's where I was that Masters Sunday in Augusta, Kansas.
I'll never forget the writer from Europe who flew into, I want to say DC, and got on a connecting flight, and he looked out the window of the plane and the Atlantic Ocean was on his right. They were taking him to Augusta, Maine.
Right. Yeah, that was a classic. He certainly, he dealt with that good naturedly. But yeah, that was something, right? He knew, hey, these trees are still very bare, as they would be in northern New England. But yeah, that was a fun story because we got information on, there was one in Australia where I guess it was home to a super venomous poisonous snake that would put like a rattlesnake to shame. Like this thing would like almost look at you and kill you. So that was fun to work a lot of details. And as you know, details are what make stories. And
oh gosh,
that was a good one to work into that piece.
So much of Augusta is centered around music. Leading to this next question, the song that CBS plays forever when playing the piano, but Amen Corner got its name because of music. And Bill, you wrote this story in 2008 for Golf Digest, which has always infatuated me, about how Amen Corner got its name from a piece of music and correcting where it came from. You run into things like the original artist of this song for Amen Corner was a lady named Mildred Bailey, who was Native American lady from the early part of the century. You got Herbert Warren Wind, one of the most respected journalists in golf. You got Mezz Mezzrow, which you can talk a little bit about here, and Sports Illustrated. So this is for anybody that wants to know the story of Amen Corner and how it got its name. You ought to read Bill's story from 2008 about a great deal of great reporting, but also great storytelling. So, Bill, maybe give us an indication of how you got wind of this, why this was a story that you pursued.
Yes, of course, any of us that have covered the Masters for any length of time, familiar with Herbert Warren Wind and his legacy there, and covering so many Masters, writing so many eloquent words about it. But yeah, Herb Wind, when he was working for Sports Illustrated in 1958, he's the man that coined the phrase Amen Corner. That was where it was first used. And as I wrote in the piece, it didn't catch on immediately. And as best I could tell in putting together that story, it really wasn't used again for another 7-8 years in the mid 60s. And then it kind of was used a little bit. And then again, there was a little bit of a gap. And then in the early 70s, Sports Illustrated, Dan Jenkins, Herb Wind in the New Yorker, they used it again and it kind of caught on. And it's, of course, become, one of the most known catchphrases in all of sport. But an angle to the reason I did that story for Golf Digest was a man named Richard Moore, he had worked for IMG, International Management Group, for years. He was very much into golf. He was a collector. He was trying to set up like a little mini museum at his home. And he wanted to find the album, the actual vinyl of the song that Herb Wind had credited for many years as being the genesis for why Amen Corner popped into his mind to as a description for the 11th, 12th, 13th holes at Augusta. And Richard Moore tried to find this album, this record from a guy named Mezz Mezzrow, who was a jazz clarinetist. And it did not exist. Mezz Mezzrow, in contrast to what Herb Wind had said through the years, 1984 was really when Herb first delineated the origin of where he got it. He said, I got it from, it was a jazz record in the 30s when I was at Yale by Mezz Mezzrow. Well, it turned out, as Richard Moore uncovered, Mezz Mezzrow did not record the song. It was recorded, as you said, by Mildred Bailey with the Dorsey brothers. And that was an intriguing part of the piece. But Richard Moore, he idolized Herb Wind. He didn't want to do anything to Herb's distinguished record. But on the other hand, it was clear Herb had just made a mistake. He misremembered it, and it was not Mezz Mezzrow, but it was one of the recordings was by Mildred Bailey.
Two sidelights to this. Number one, I think Augusta National, Cliff Robertson, whomever, before Amen Corner became, they were calling that streak of holes what, the water loop or something?
Yeah,
like
something
that, right?
really boring, right? Just the water loop. I mean, Amen Corner, I mean, that's become so recognizable. And Herbert Warren Wind he was trying to come up with something where that year, 58, there had been a ton of action down there with the Arnold Palmer embedded ball on the 12th, and then, Bob Jones is down there and he tells Palmer a hole later that, okay, there's no penalty, you're good, you can play the second ball and all that. It was one of the most memorable exchanges in Masters history. And, it happened to be the year that Herb Wind was trying to describe that area, and that's what he came up with.
No doubt. And one of the guys you mentioned here, and every time Bill and I chat about this storyline, we come up on this guy named Mezz Mezzrow. Maybe you can describe Mezz and what he was more famous for than jazz music.
Well, yeah. So I'm doing it, as the young people say today, the deep dive. I don't like that phrase, but that's what I was doing on this piece. I really was trying to find out all I could about, all these different elements that went into Herbert Warren Wind calling it Amen Corner. And Mezz Mezzrow, he was known in his age for really being an advocate of marijuana and a user. And he was even referred to as the Johnny Appleseed of weed. I mean, it was pretty funny that this turns out to be the history of this guy who's been linked so many years to Augusta National and the Masters. But Richard, just going back to Richard Moore, he was not trying to embarrass Herb Wind. He just felt like, hey, I've uncovered this. This is the reality. It wasn't a Mezz Mezzrow song. It was by these other people. But yeah.
Well, if I might, Bill, the lyrics to her song are particularly appropriate. I'm just going to read a little bit real quick here. You can shout with all your might, but if you ain't living right, there's no use shouting in that Amen Corner. If your name ain't on that roll, all that noise won't save your soul. So stop your shouting in the Amen Corner. So
the lyrics are great. And, okay, if you're not living right, you could translate that to, okay, if you misjudge the wind on 12 and hit it in the water, as a few guys have done, you're not living right there. But of course, it's talking more broadly about living a Christian life. But it was fun to get into all that. And I'd like to think that readers enjoyed getting the full story on all that.
Well, as I mentioned, I enjoyed the reporting, B, the storytelling, which you're great at doing both of those, but also the subtle humor you got in there about Mezz Mezzrow and so forth. It's priceless. I'm reading on, and all of a sudden I run into that and about fall out of my seat. I'm laughing so hard. So really quite good there. So Bill and I, for all the listeners and people watching here, since we share North Carolina ties, we also have this infatuation with the Andy Griffith Show. And you're the one who offered this up earlier on about how Southern Pines was sort of like Mayberry. So why did you become so infatuated with that show? Because at our age, that show's a little bit before our time, even though reruns are so prevalent. But what drew your attention about that series of shows?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I watched it as a young kid. I mean, it debuted in 60 and ran to 68 or something. So I would have been, pretty young. But of course, the reruns were on immediately. And, they were on every afternoon, whatever channel you were getting from Raleigh or Greensboro or, wherever, Wilmington, wherever it might have been. So they were just part of the fabric of growing up a North Carolinian. And, I just think the show was, it was very well done. And, Barney Fife was a genius character, via Don Knotts. And it just was, just enjoyable. And, even now I'll watch sometimes. It's like an escape from all the stuff that's going on. It was but some of them were very, very cleverly written and acted.
The only thing they were missing in today's world, where they're building golf courses in these rural places out of the way, wouldn't it be great if there was a Mayberry National Golf Club or something like that? That would have been fantastic.
Not many golf references. There is one of the later. I know some people don't like the later color episodes when, to be honest, Don Knotts had left the show and some of the plots were a little weak, but There was one where they got a new doctor in town, and he shows up driving a convertible with his golf clubs in the back, and he's
Yep.
putting on his carpet in his office when he's waiting for new patients. So that, yeah, not many golf references though on the Andy Griffith Show.
So what you're saying is golf ruined that show. It went away soon thereafter, right?
I think that the absence of Don Knotts and Andy realized that the good days were behind them. It was better to go out sort of on top than try to keep forcing it.
No doubt, no doubt. So since we're so infatuated in North Carolina, but we're also interested in the Masters, do you remember when that took hold on you? Did you watch it on TV and were interested in it, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I'm sure. Saw it on TV, as a kid, and then of course would read about it in the day. We always got the Greensboro Daily News. That was our family's morning paper. A lot of people in the Sandhills would get the Raleigh paper or Charlotte or Fayetteville, but we were a Greensboro family for whatever reason, and they would always send somebody, to cover it. And I was an avid reader of those sports pages from as soon as I could read. That was a ritual with my dad sitting down at the breakfast table and looking at the paper. And of course, being a sports nut, I gravitated to, reading about the Tar Heels or the Wolfpack or NFL, Redskins. But of course, come springtime, the Masters was a big deal, and Smith Barrier would be there, or later Larry Keach, or our friend Helen Ross.
Erwin Smallwood.
Erwin Smallwood,
Yeah.
such a gem of a human being. But yeah, yeah, and along of course, the golf in those days, you weren't getting gavel coverage. You were getting 4 or 5 holes.
Yeah.
Whether the regular tour events from Doral or Riviera, wherever it might be, you were getting an hour and a half, 2 hours. But I would eat it up because there wasn't a lot of, you weren't getting a lot of golf on TV. And of course, I was saving up to buy a Golf Digest or something at the convenience store, and yeah, it just kind of became a part of my golf life.
No doubt, no doubt. So since we're connected via North Carolina and Andy Griffith and the Masters too, and ironically, you mentioned this, the first year I went to the Masters as a media member was 1985, the same year you were talking about. In that span from 85 to today, what's the biggest difference that you see in not only the tournament and the club, but just the town? What have you seen that's been the biggest change there?
Well, much like, my hometown area, but even more so, the growth there in Augusta. In those early years that I went, you'd kind of wonder, like, okay, how do these motels and hotels make it the rest of the year? Because there just didn't seem to be that much going on for, I don't know how many people lived in Augusta in those years, 50,000 maybe, 40,000. But you just kind of wondered, when you were paying, 150 a night at the Knights Inn or something, okay, what do they do the rest of the other 51 weeks?
Charge $25.
Right. Well, one year I did stay over on the Monday night, and I remember my rate there went down to like $39. So yeah, it was quite a differential. We called that place the Purple Palace because of the purple bedspreads and drapes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd hate to find out what went on there other than Masters Week, Bill. Okay.
Yeah. But and just the course itself, how I was glad I got to experience the course in those years before all the lengthening, because I think it was easier on spectators, and it was easier on players. You didn't have all, like, say from 6 to 7T. You just kind of stepped off the green and the 7T was right now. Now the players, go back however many yards it is. It's just kind of awkward. Same thing on 8. Just pick your hole where they've added a lot of yards. 11T, it's now back in who knows where. But it's just a different vibe now. I was glad I got to experience it in those years, because that course at that era in the 80s, and even into the early 90s, that course was pretty much, in terms of length, was as it had been for 40, 50 years. It hadn't really changed that much because equipment hadn't changed. You didn't need to change it.
I agree. My biggest perception is outside of the gates. I remember when I first went the first few years, Washington Road was like walking through the county fair.
Yeah.
Because you had all these vendors out there selling these Masters trinkets, or food on the side of the road, or parking, anything like that. And now you go, it's Augusta National has purchased a lot of the perimeter of the place, and you can park for free, which astounds a lot of people. but it's not quite as intimate as it used to be. And I'm not saying that as criticism. It's just different. It's a lot bigger place and a bigger event than it used to be in my mind.
Much bigger, absolutely. And yeah, I mean they've bought up, a lot of the properties on both sides of the street. I remember, this is going back to my first few years as a photographer in the 80s as a young man. There was a place called I want to say it was called the Gin Mills, a bar over in one of those shopping centers across from the club. I'd go in there and we'd drink with some of the caddies that we knew early in the week at least. It's just a more, the players weren't as stratified away from everybody then. It was lower key, I would say, even though it was obviously the Masters and a big deal. It was a little different, and nothing stays the same. Everything evolves, but it's different, as you say.
Talking about writing, Bill, you just penned your memoir, A Quick Nine Before Dark. I'm curious as to what led you to go down this path to write this. Maybe just give us a sense for why and when you thought this was something you wanted to pursue.
Well, I first thought about it and did a tiny bit of writing, drafting fragments of chapters almost 20 years ago, but I didn't pursue it fully. I didn't have a publishing contract. And it was really just in the last few years that I decided to really tackle it, and do it, make it happen. I just think where I grew up in the Southern Pines, Pinehurst area, and as far as I know, I'm the only golf writer that was really born in Pinehurst that went on to have a career like I've had. And I just figured, and I wanted to write. I wanted to try to use my writing chops, if I have them, to really try to make a book that was, good writing, captured, another time and place, in the years that we were kids. And I was fortunate to find a publisher, Chris Slavic, who has a small publishing entity called Tatra Press, that he was interested. And I basically wrote the book between October of 2024 and August of last year. So aside from just fragments that I'd written earlier, it was about a 10-month writing process.
Okay, so you were so used to, and I'm the same way, of writing about other people and other things. You write about Augusta National, you write about the Masters, you write about Jack Nicklaus. All of a sudden, you're writing about yourself. I'm wondering, was that a challenge, or how did you cover that?
I enjoyed it. And I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it is that over the last 10, 11 years, I've written a regular column for Pine Straw magazine, which is based in Southern Pines. It's owned by the company that owns the longtime Pilot weekly newspaper, one of the best community papers in the country. And, in that column, I very occasionally write about golf, but mostly it's a lot of memories about growing up and family matters and different things. And that certainly helped me kind of key in on remembering things that turned out to be useful for the memoir. I guess there's a certain arrogance that you think that your life is going to be interesting to people, but I'd like to think that my story is not necessarily. I think people can relate to some aspects of it, whether it's some aspects of personal life and marriages that don't last, or family matters. My dad is a big part of my book. He had a kind of a mysterious start to his life in 1920, and he was in World War II, and he had some issues, and then I introduced him to golf versus the other way around. So I just thought there were enough things that would, if I could write it well, that would be of interest, and I certainly hope that it does resonate and finds a readership.
Well, I know the one thing that was interesting to me, and you told me about this, is you escaped to a place in Southern Pines. What's it called? Weymouth Woods, is that right?
Weymouth Center.
Yeah, you escaped there and sort of camped out and wrote. What was that process like?
Well, that's the former private residence, the Boyd family, that they donated it to the town of Southern Pines, and it's a cultural center now, and they have a great thing they call the Writers in Residence program, where if you're a North Carolinian or you have North Carolina ties, you can apply to spend a week or 2 weeks there. And it's a great place. As I noted in the acknowledgments to my memoir, if you can't write there, you can't write anywhere, because there's a beautiful grounds. You can go out and just sort of take in the nature. Weymouth Woods, a great longleaf pine preserve is there nearby. It's just a great spot. And, yeah, I spent two different stays there, one week and one of 2 weeks. The 2 week, during all of which I worked on the memoir. So it was a lot of fun. And as I told the executive there, you'll never get anyone stay here that has closer roots, because my childhood home was literally 4 blocks away.
How about
So,
that?
and I would walk past the entrance to Weymouth Center. It's marked by a couple of hounds on pillars. I walked past that many times going to school, which was just 8, 10 blocks up the road, up Ridge Street. So a lot of fun to go back and spend time there.
Did you have to swear a vow of silence when you went in there to do that?
No,
Yeah.
but purportedly there have been some ghost sightings in the Weymouth house, but I did not experience any of that. But there are some people that have been believed to have heard some things and seen some things. But I stayed both times, and they have the rooms named for different writers associated with the past history there. And I stayed in the Max Perkins room, which is
Okay.
Max Perkins was, of course, a well-known editor of book publishing long ago in New York. So I stayed in the room named for him, which was kind of cool. I remember one of my sisters gave me a biography about Max Perkins when I was in college, I think. So it was kind of cool to, full circle. Okay, I'm working on my own book, staying in a room named for Max Perkins. So that was fun.
No doubt. So Bill, maybe folks that are watching here, tell them how they can purchase the book, when it's available, things of that nature, so that people can get tied into this.
Well, thanks, Ward. Yeah, it's the publishing date is April 1st. As I said, Tatra Press is the publisher. It's available on various e-tailers, as I guess you call them now, bookshop.org, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you happen to be in Southern Pines, come springtime, the Country Bookshop, one of the great little independent stores. I'm having a book signing on April 2nd at the Weymouth Center, put on by the Country Bookshop. So I'm looking forward to that, kind of launching the book in my hometown. That's going to be fun.
No doubt. And I don't know about other folks who have written very much, but you and I are so used to somebody telling you, here's your deadline and here's the length of the story you have to write. And that gives you some boundaries. But when you're writing a book, which I have too, you don't have any length, and it can be almost maddening because you can go on and on and on and you're never finished. I'm wondering how you overcame that.
I kind of had a target length in mind, somewhere between 70 and 80,000 words, which is a common length for memoir. And I ended up being around 74,000 words. So I kind of hit my target. And I wish I'd been better at writing, getting up, writing the same times every day. I know a lot of writers that have produced many more books than I have are very disciplined. I think that's the key to it, is just, you can always rewrite, but you got to put something on the page. And I struggle with that a little bit, but, I had some good friends encouraging me and reading stuff before I turned it in. And, I would say it went pretty smoothly. And I think, having written on deadline for newspapers, online sites, magazines, I think that helped. But it is different, as you say. You've got to know when to, okay, I've talked about this enough. I need to talk about this more. Of course, when it's all said and done, you second guess yourself. But I'm proud of it. It's a modest book, but I think I hope people think it's a good read.
Well, if you ever run short on words, you could just add a chapter on Mezz Mezzrow, and that would be awesome. It would be really good, really good. So we're asking everybody, Bill, when we do this, I'm going to do some quick hitters with you, and maybe give me your answers. So these are all Masters related.
All right, this is the lightning round, huh?
The lightning round. Yeah, you make money at the end of this. Pimento cheese or egg salad?
Pimento cheese, but only one usually per Masters.
Do you have a favorite sandwich if it's not one of those two?
The chicken fillet sandwich.
Chris Cunningham, who's the owner of Wife Saver in Augusta, used to provide the chicken sandwich for the Masters. And he said when he took over that business, Augusta National was giving chicken sandwiches out. They called them chicken sandwiches, but it was a bone-in cold chicken breast on a piece of white bread. That was the sandwich.
Wow.
So that's changed a little bit. It's much better than it used to be.
No, yeah, they're pretty tasty.
I agree. You're limited to one purchase, one thing from the Masters Golf Shop. What's it going to be?
Oh gosh, I'd probably say a nice cap that's large enough for my noggin that has a simple logo on it.
Okay. All right. Got it. Got it. Favorite and least favorite holes at Augusta National.
I'll go favorite number 13. Well, no, I'll go number 12. I'll go
Okay.
number 12. And least favorite, I'll say number 5.
Why do you say those two?
12, just, I mean, it's a genius hole, partially because of the topography that the winds dance there. One of my better lines one time years ago, I used the phrase, as if there were ghosts with a grudge, and I think Francesco Molinari and Tony Finau and a couple of others might have felt that way when they saw the water a few years, 2019. But yeah, genius hole. Amazing, as you know, how different the hole looks in its manicured state now versus how it looked in the 40s
Oh, I
or
know.
50s with the
I
rough
agree.
banks and everything.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
yeah, and at least fair, I don't know, five me, it's a tremendously hard hole, and it has had some weird stuff happen. I mean, Jack Nicklaus, holed out twice there in a week in the 90s.
Exactly.
That was a bizarre week
Yeah.
back before the hole had been lengthened so much.
Yep.
But, it's always that green is a real challenge for sure.
I agree. All right. So I'm a newbie to Augusta and the Masters. Can you suggest a routine or a favorite place to watch golf when you go to Augusta National?
Well, I think if certainly a first time visitor, I think you want to plant yourself behind the 12th tee, put a chair there and be able to watch that. That's I would say that's key. Just because you're really close to the players when they walk up to 12 and hit their shots. You're really close, and it's just really cool. That would be a recommendation. But just walk the whole course, whether you walk it backwards or start on 10 or just see it all, because I think first-time visitors are amazed by the elevation changes, much hillier than you get the sense of on television.
No doubt. And I think one of the neatest things is a lot of people don't realize when they go for the first time, if you purchase a chair and plunk it down at whatever spot on the course, somebody might sit in it, but when you return, they respect the fact that's your chair and they get up and let you sit back there. It's really, really quite neat.
Yeah, there's some civility there that might not exist some other places, which is nice. Despite the changes and the growth and the everything, ticket prices have gone up. It's still a little bit of a different vibe there.
Okay. All right. Since we're talking about places to go and things to do, what are your 3 favorite restaurants to eat in Augusta? I'll let you think about it a second. I'll tell a story. Bill took me to an Indian restaurant and we're sitting at the table and Bill's got this sauce. It's probably green. Is green the hottest or red the hottest?
Well, you could get a green curry that's hot, but I think I was having a vindaloo chicken that night, which is more of a red tangy tomato sauce.
Yeah, well,
It
I'm sitting
it
there.
can be very spicy.
I'm sitting there and you asked me, would you like to have some of this? And I look at you and you're sweating. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not interested in that. So,
No,
so maybe give
yeah.
us your 3 favorite places to dine in Augusta, because that's a part of the culture is going out to eat there too.
Yeah. Well, I've got to name that establishment. It's called the Taj of India on Furious Ferry. I love that place. The owners are great, very friendly. That's become a go-to for the last 10 or 15 years, at least once during Masters Week and sometimes twice. I would say Craft and Vine downtown is a fun place that we've discovered with a couple colleagues in recent years, like that. Ray's Coastal Cafe is a fun place, nice vibe. I
Yep.
know you have close ties there.
Yes.
And I got to say, I'm not a big chain restaurant guy, but the Bonefish in Augusta, like other places, is reliable, and I usually get takeout there at least one night, if not eat in.
2 of those locations you could regularly find our former colleague John Steinbretter sitting at the corner of the bar at Ray's and at Bonefish. That was his regular spot. So
Yes, enjoyed a few meals with John and other colleagues at the Bonefish. Yeah, John liked the bang bang shrimp appetizer, I believe. Uh,
Perfect. For anybody that's interested in golf in North Carolina and excellent writing, excellent photography, we just talked about, you ought to buy Bill's book, A Quick Nine Before Dark. Especially as many people as venture to Pinehurst, they can probably get an inside story of what it's been like in Pinehurst growing up there, what it's like to go there now, things of that nature. So, Bill, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll talk more about Opie and Andy and everybody like that in the future. So it'll be great. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Ward. You're very kind. And yeah, I do hope people will check out my book, A Quick Nine Before Dark. I think it will give people a sense of what the Pinehurst area was like years ago. And I hope they enjoy it. But thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.
On the road to Augusta, we honor the places where history lives, not just in trophies, but in the soil beneath your feet. That's the spirit of McConnell Golf. What began with the preservation of Donald Ross's final design at Raleigh Country Club has grown into the largest owner of premier private clubs in the Southeast. Today, their portfolio spans 17 exceptional properties across the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Virginia, featuring courses designed by legends like Ross, Pete Dye, Tom Fazio, Arnold Palmer, and Greg Norman. And consider this: Sedgefield Country Club, home of the PGA Tour's Wyndham Championship, is also where the Atlantic Coast Conference was founded back in 1953. That's not just golf history, that's sports history. McConnell Golf lives by a simple motto: pure golf for the true golfer. Championship conditions, remarkable hospitality, and a family-focused club lifestyle that extends well beyond the fairways. To learn more about this extraordinary collection of clubs, visit McConnellGolf.com. McConnell Golf, where championship golf meets lasting tradition.
Talking about music in Augusta, and if there's anybody that knows the heritage of music in Augusta, current, old, weird, anything like that, it'd be Ed Turner. Ed, I'm surprised, you may tell me this, but you don't have a nickname. Like, if you're in the music business, it ought to be Ed Big T Turner, or Ed Guitar Turner, or Fast Eddie Turner, something like that. I'm pleased to have Ed Turner with me. Ed used to host a show when I lived in Augusta from 91 till 2000 on Sunday night called the Mad Music Asylum. And it was awesome because you'd hear music from people that you were very familiar with that you never heard, and people you never heard of. It was songs you never heard of. So that was the coolest thing. The only thing I'm wondering is, if you're in the music business, you got to have a nickname. It'd be Big Ed Turner. It'd be Slick Ed Turner. It'd be Ed Big T Turner, things like that. So do you have a nickname in the music world that maybe a lot of folks don't know?
Well, it's interesting being a long beleaguered Braves fan. I was really known more or less as Ed, not Ted Turner, you know.
Okay. I like that. That's awesome.
Closest, Ted's big ranch, up in the north. It's called Montana. You've heard, it's Montana.
Well, I appreciate you joining me because I'm sure we'll get the weird music and all this stuff, which I cherish that. Maybe you can give me a sense of Augusta's musical heritage. When I say Macon, Georgia, people say, oh, that's the Allman Brothers. When I say Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I live, people say Leonard Skinner.
Yep.
And when I go to Augusta, Georgia, most people think James Brown. Maybe give me sort of the high level picture of what Augusta's music scene is like and has been for a long time.
Well, of course, it was probably originally, but way back in the day, a country and western town. As the people used to say in Augusta, they had both kinds of music in Augusta, country and western.
Okay.
But Brenda Lee was 12 years old, and her name Brenda Lee Tarpley. She was a 12-year-old kid here in I think outside of Hepzibah, Harlem, whatever, out in the rural parts of Richmond County where Augusta's located. And she was kind of the first big star, I guess, along with Mr. Brown, James Brown, who came along. And people don't realize just how quickly James Brown put the international world on its collective ear. He was so popular all over the world. Ward, very much like Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, that whole idea of universal appeal, that was James Brown.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's a fairly complicated story, isn't it, Ed, about James? James was so renowned all over the world, but folks in Augusta, you know, it was sort of a love me, hate me situation sometimes. Is that a fair assessment to say that people felt like when he, you know, some of the things he did that were unlawful, they didn't think much of that. But what's the sense for the place that James holds in Augusta these days?
Well, it's quite revered now. There was a big statue downtown in Augusta, which right now is in storage, but they'll have it back up soon as they're rebuilding downtown Augusta, which is going to be phenomenal. But no, back when Mr. Brown was still alive, you're never that popular in your own hometown. It's something about being in your own town. You get to see, you would see James Brown eating at restaurants like T-Bones or at the Baskin and Robbins in Daniel Village, or in one of his nightclubs that he had here in Augusta. Ironically, James Brown's body was kept in the exact spot that his original nightclub was located in the early 70s. Later became the place which is the Charlie Reed Funeral Home, where Mr. Brown's body was kept. So it was kept in a place that used to be his nightclub. Only James Brown, only in Augusta.
No doubt. So if I come to Augusta and I'm a James Brown fan, the statue's not there, you said, anymore. Where can I find, I know, some semblance of him? I guess the Soul Bar is still there, correct?
Oh, yeah. Coco Rubio and the Soul Bar. They were one of the first businesses, along with Matt Flynn of Nacho Mama. They were the two guys that were downtown when nobody was downtown. And yeah, Coco especially has kept Mr. Brown's legacy alive, as has his marvelous daughter, Deanna, we see her around town all the time. She helps the community. She is very, very well respected in the Augusta area and gives back with the James Brown turkey and food giveaways that happen several times a year.
Cool. I know they're reconstructing the arena now, right? Is that still going to be the James Brown Arena when that's all said and done?
You know, it's interesting. I'm sure, I can't imagine it not being as its predecessor was, of course, called that. But I think you're talking about naming rights. They have to be responsible to the taxpayers. And whether people like it or not, it's whomever divvies up the most amount of money. I mean, look in Atlanta, you've got Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you have Truist Field. You've got, that's the way of the world nowadays. So like with anything else, Ward, you follow the buck and what happens, there it is.
No, I agree. I hear you. Well, aside from James, I know you got some perspective on this. Tell me some other folks that may have come out of the Garden City and went on to musical fame. So I think you mentioned to me on the side when we were presenting for this.
Yeah. There's something in the water around here. You mentioned Macon earlier. People a lot of times don't mention Otis Redding because he was outside of Macon in a town called Juliet, which is known to Hollywood as fried green tomatoes country. And and of course, Little Richard Penniman's from Bibb County area, where he got to start washing dishes. And then along with Mr. Brown came along on the specialty record label, 1956, 1957. These were good rhythm and blues labels. So they were able to get distribution where some R&B artists did not. They had national. Mr. Brown always had national distribution. And as a matter of fact, to this day, if you go into a record store in Europe, you're going to find a ton of James Brown album vinyl for sale.
That's awesome. So I think you mentioned something about that you went to high school with the guy who went on to guitar fame, Dixie Dregs, and maybe tell that story if you don't mind.
Sure. Steve Morse and I went to school, Langford and Richmond Academy. That was a junior high back in the day, from about 68 through 1972. And we all knew Steve was just going to be famous, especially when he decided to leave town and go down to the University of Miami, the music school there. And he and Andy West from Augusta founded the Dixie Dregs, along with a local now physician, Dr. Alan Sloan, and Steve Davidowski. They started Dixie Dregs, and Steve has been named Guitar Player of the Year so many times by Guitar Player magazine that they retired the award in his honor, and he can't win it anymore. So he's a 3-time winner of that. And Steve is now the lead guitarist, or was until recently, of this band you've heard of called Deep Purple.
Okay.
So Steve is from Augusta. The guys from Lady Antebellum, they're from Augusta. You had Pete Drake, who played pedal steel and guitar on George Harrison's All Things Must Pass album. He's from Augusta. Hey, a lot of people are from Augusta. I'm almost from Augusta. I'm in Augusta now, and I love it.
I hear you. Well, good deal. So there's a song that I want you to tell me the background on. Mm-hmm. The Nitty Gritty Dirt Band did a song, and it had a line in there that said, "Augusta is just no place to be." What's the origin of that? How did that come about? That's become like the famous line from that song.
It's a real interesting story. A country and Western dude, really high respected, very respected, hell of a picker too, named Rodney Crowell, wrote that song. And his friends in the Dirt Band, or the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, heard it and did it on their American Dream album. And it's really more or less Rodney was talking about, hey, it's a really rough night, and I'm not in a really good place, and right now I don't want to be anywhere, and Augusta, Georgia is no place to be. So Rodney always said it was a matter of syntax, what happened to fit, kind of like China Grove by the Doobie Brothers. Right. They didn't write that they didn't even know a city in Texas existed called China Grove. And so they found out, and then they tailor-made the lyric. Tom Johnston of the Doobie Brothers tailor-made that lyric to have China Grove.
It sounded good, right?
Billy Payne played that little little Chinese motif, and so it gave them the idea of China Grove. So lyrically, it wasn't Faulkner or Shakespeare or anything like that.
Okay. All right. I've always wondered about that line and what the origin was. It just sounded good. So there you go. It played.
They sang it in Augusta. The Dirt Band, when they came to the Post Office nightclub, sang that song in Augusta in front of 500 highly inebriated people, and the whole audience went crazy. So that song, sung in Augusta, when they got to Augusta, Georgia is no place to be, place went nuts.
I hear you. Man. So I'm going to call you a musicologist, if that's okay.
That's okay.
Every year when the Masters comes on and CBS comes on and they play the keys for the Augusta song, what comes to mind for you? I think that's the longest running sports theme song in existence.
It's not just the beautiful, lovely treble notes. It's not the professionally played musical figure that you hear over and over. The way it relaxes you, as Herbert Warren Wind, or Wind Warren, whatever his name was, so eloquently posted back in the 40s or 50s, whenever. No, what I think about when I hear the Masters theme music is just how much money Dave Loggins is making in royalties.
That might be a different story. I'm afraid he's dealing with Augusta National, so he may not have made as much as he should have.
Oh, all of that's licensed. Believe me, he's making a fortune. It's kind of like the dude that wrote the Addams Family theme, Vic Mizzy. One of his many weddings, he went down the aisle with his bride to the Addams Family theme because he had made millions of dollars off of it. Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, there you go. Very simple.
Hey, pay me a couple of $1 million, I'll hop down the aisle to that song too.
Oh, I agree. So that song has got a great heritage. As you said, Dave Loggins did Please Come to Boston, but that's probably his most famous song. But then again, when that plays on CBS every year, people don't know the origin of it. But when they hear about Dave writing that song after a trip to Augusta National, it's a pretty spectacular backstory about how that occurred.
He couldn't have done it better. It's the perfect piece of music, and I doubt we'll ever hear it changed.
Oh, I agree. 2 years ago, Ed, or was it 3 years ago, EA Sports came out with its video game for Augusta National. And deep into the video game, is an updated version of that song, and it's more electric. And there's a guy named Johnsy played it, Jonsi.
Well,
Made it more of like a updated theme song kind of thing. It didn't go very far because CBS still plays the usual keys, but still, it was interesting that there was a somewhat of a variation of it that came out. Sort of like,
because the writer makes the money in that particular instance. Believe me, the writers make the money. Everybody pays the writers of intellectual material in the United States.
right,
That's the cool things about that.
I agree. So I wanted to just have you on because music is always such an important factor in the fabric of a community. So, you know, when you go to the Masters, you're probably thinking just about golf and having a pimento cheese sandwich and doing whatever. But when you hear that theme song, or when you hear Georgia's on My Mind, which has been covered about 850 times by different people, the Ray Charles one's probably the best one, I would suspect, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. Or you think about the term Amen Corner, which Herb Wind penned, and he thought it was from some jazz player back in the Midwest, but it was actually this lady from the 30s in a jazz band who was a Native American. That was her. She was a Native American. So she wrote the song with the Dorsey brothers and sang.
I love it.
And so, but it was not given the right author, so to speak. So, but still, it's pretty cool when you think of Amen Corner, you can think of a jazz tune. So, pimento cheese or egg salad?
Egg salad.
Why's that?
Consistency, and they're made exactly the way God intended.
Okay. All right. I tell Ed Turner, you can go into the golf shop at Augusta National, but you can only buy one thing. What's that going to be?
Well, the gnomes are real good investments these days.
Yeah.
So since I lost all my fortune in cryptocurrencies, I'm going for the gnome.
I agree. That's a big want there. I agree. All right. If I'm coming to town and I want to go somewhere to eat dinner, tell me your top 3 favorite places to go dine.
Without a doubt, Cadwallader's is number 1. They do not advertise. They're locally owned. They've been there for 35, 40 years. Cadwallader's. The second place I'd go to is Reinhardt's. People need to go to a nice local place run by local people, and it's Reinhardt's. The third one is a cool new sports bar called Brink's Tavern in North Augusta. Overlooks the city. It's fabulous, and there are television screens everywhere with hamburgers that cost $25.
There you go. Okay. Same drill. 3 favorite places to play golf in Augusta if I'm coming to Augusta during Masters Week.
First of all, Augusta Country Club. I've been playing there since the 70s. There is not a hole on the course I cannot 3-putt. Number 2, I would say probably Forest Hills. It's the course that I learned to play on. And once again, to know you're playing on a course where they had the Southern Open and all these really cool tournaments back in the day, I like that. And the new design is pretty interesting too. And the third one, I think, even though I hadn't played there yet, the Patch is already my new favorite, third favorite course, because there's something you learn about if you play at Augusta Country Club. If you're on number 9, which backs up to number 12 green at the Augusta National, when you're on the Augusta Country Club, especially this time of year when everything's nice and dormant, and you look over at the National, you then realize that the other man's grass is, in fact, greener.
Yeah, you got that. I agree. There's no doubt about it. Well, Ed, thanks for joining us, man. And for folks that don't know, if you're going to the Masters and you go about 3 blocks from Augusta National, there's a place called Turner Keyboards, right?
Fabulous place to do business.
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I've got a piano from Turner Keyboards in our house here in Jacksonville. So I'd let you know.
God bless all 88 of your keys.
So we cherish the fact we got that from Augusta, Georgia.
I cherish the fact that thank you. It helped me to pay for last month's dues at Augusta Country Club.
There you go. Perfect. Well, good deal. Ed, thanks for joining us, man. Have a great Masters week and have a great rest of the week.
Hit them good. It's going to be a great tournament. Go Scotty Scheffler.
Oh, I hear you. Thank you, sir. Take care.
Well, it's springtime in the valley on Magnolia Lane. It's the Augusta National, it's the master of the game. Who'll wear that green coat on Sunday afternoon? Who walk that 18th fairway, singing his tune? Augusta, your dogwoods and pines, they play on my mind like a song. Augusta, it's you that I love, and it's you that I miss when I'm gone. Well, it's Watson, Byron Nelson, and Mary, Crenshaw, Player, and Steve, and it's Amen Corner, it's Hogan's Perfect Swing. It's Saracens double eagle at the 15th and 35, and the spirit of Clifford Roberts that keeps it alive. Augusta, your dogwoods and pines, they play on my mind like a song. Augusta, you know it's you that I love, and it's you that I miss when I'm gone. It's the legions of Arnie's army and the golden bear's thrones, and the wooden shafted legends of Bobby Jones singing Augusta. So that's how it really goes when you're watching it instrumental.
This gentleman we got today, Kyle Loggins, his dad, Dave Loggins, is responsible for that music that you hear every year. And a lot of people don't know the details. It just got lyrics. It wasn't necessarily just played on the piano. It was just become the most iconic song in all of sports theme song. I think this is the 45th year. So Kyle, thanks for being with us, man. We appreciate it and look forward to talking a little bit more about how this song came about and how special it is for you and your family.
Absolutely. Ward, thank you for having me. Looking forward to chatting about it and sharing hopefully some parts of the story that haven't been heard before.
I hear you. So first off, Dave Loggins is your dad, who unfortunately passed away last year. So maybe give us a sense for his career, a lot of stuff behind the scenes too. Just paint the picture about who Dave Loggins was, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Okay.
So born in East Tennessee, moved to Nashville, I want to say early 20s, 2021 in there, and wanted to be a songwriter. And so he was lucky to come into some success pretty early, and that he had a cut with Three Dog Night called Pieces of April, and started touring all over the world, opening for various acts, and then had his big hit with Please Come to Boston, which still is amazing to think about, that he was nominated for Best Male Pop Vocal in 1975 against Harry Chapin, Elton John, Billy Preston, and he lost to Stevie Wonder. So it's a tough round.
Yeah.
But I've got a picture in my office of him getting to meet John Lennon, which was one of his heroes. And so he had a really awesome beginning to his career as a singer-songwriter. And that kind of led into the 80s, where he decided to just take a step back and primarily just be a songwriter, and had a really wonderful career. A lot of number ones, a lot of awards, a lot of success. But I think his biggest, the most prideful accomplishment he had, really, I think, was the success of Augusta.
Yeah, that song, people hear it, but they don't know the origin of it. They don't know who did it. There's lyrics, all this kind of stuff. So maybe we can drill down on this a little bit. So maybe from your perspective, give us how the origin of this song came about. When did it happen? And what was the process for getting it to be the CBS theme song for the Masters?
Yeah, so the way the story goes, as far as I understand it, I've asked him to tell me the story many times, so I've tried to take notes, get all these details right. In 1980, he was invited by a good friend who lived in Augusta to come walk the course, and he was already playing a show in town at the Red Lion, which I don't know if it's still open, but that was the spot, I guess, back there to hang out. And so he was invited to walk the course, and just while walking through it, started to come up with the melody. And it's interesting because now there's no vocals that you hear on the track, but there were originally vocals. He wrote a whole song where he really sings about a lot of the standout moments, the famous golfers that have been a part of the Masters. And so he had this chorus that he started coming up with, but really wrote a lot of the song just walking the course because he was so inspired by it. He always mentions hole 14 really caught him, and that's where this melody started to come to play. But that's really how it started. And then his same friend that had invited him there was close friends with Frank Chirkinian, who just happened to be looking for a theme for the Masters, which was a wonderful idea that he even had to start this process. So they met. Dad said, I'm the guy to do it. I'm going to write the song. It's going to be great. And now this is the Masters, so spring of 1980. And it wouldn't be until 81 that he had finished recording the song, which was fairly last minute, here in a little town called Franklin, just outside of Nashville. And then he presents the song to Frank just before the 81 Masters. He loves it. He said, you did a great job. They used it, but really had no idea at the time if it would be used more than once. So it was almost just kind of like a test. Let's see, everyone really likes this. Let's see how it works. And then the next year and the year after that and the year after that. And it just became a tradition, just like many other parts of the Masters. But that was the origin story of it.
You almost said a tradition unlike any other.
I almost did. I don't know if that's trademarked. I don't know if I can say it or not.
We'll use it today.
Yeah, but it is.
There's an even deeper story here. You mentioned the Red Lion and that year.
Yes.
It's probably allowed you to be created.
Yes.
So tell me that story. What occurred that when he visited Augusta that year?
Yeah, so my mom is from Augusta. My grandparents moved there. They're from a small town in Georgia. Moved to Augusta, and he worked for the Georgia National Guard his whole career. So my mom was born in Augusta. My sister was born there. And my mom just happened to be invited out by a friend to go to the Red Lion on that fateful night. And while she was there, my dad asked her if she wanted to dance. I believe he said, can you dance while holding the beer in your hand? Was the line. And a couple days later, he said, hey, I'm going to go walk Augusta National. You want to join me? So she's out there actually walking with him. They're just meeting and just starting this journey together. And he's writing the melody while they're walking together down the course. So I think that's really cool that they met, and that's where that all started. And she moved to Nashville shortly after that, and the success of Augusta blew up, and they were riding the coattails on that into the year. Apparently, they were actually invited to Japan so he could perform the song late in 1981, and they had him perform at multiple places. Someone that I believe owned or looked over the broadcast in Japan wanted him there. They loved the song and they loved the event so much. So they gave him a backing band that was Japanese country band, And he performed the Masters theme
Yeah.
multiple times around Japan in late 81. So just to show you just how much throughout the world that had already become pretty embraced.
Unbelievable. So now,
Yeah.
did he compose this song? I know we hear the piano version, but I would presume that he composed it with guitar or something else. What were the instrumentals that were included with what he composed?
Yeah. So on the original recording, he wrote it on guitar. He's lefty, so I always have to change my hands around when I'm saying that. So he wrote the song. When they recorded it, it's him playing acoustic guitar and singing. And then they had a string orchestra as well. So you've got the piano, bass. There's a little bit of electric guitar if you really listen deep in the mix. In some cases, when you listen to it, the piano stands out the most, which is beautiful. What he played over his music is wonderful. But if you listen closely, you can usually hear the acoustic guitar right underneath that piano, and that's Dad playing that part. But yeah, it had to come together quickly. They had to get that recording done. I believe it was done in a day, and had to get it onto a tape and rush to Augusta just in time. But yeah, that's him playing guitar and originally singing.
If he's interacting with Frank Cherkinian, who's no longer with us, he's the godfather of golf TV.
That's what I've heard.
And his nickname was the Ayatollah, because he was famous. If you were doing something on air as a broadcaster with the Masters, he would yell and curse in your ear. So he was famous. So it sounds like your dad got along with him famously. So that's good. That's good.
He did. I think he won him over with that recording. But yeah, that was a lucky meeting that they were even introduced, and that he even had the idea to think of a theme song. I wish I could thank him for even coming up with that idea, because I would imagine back then that was not as common. It's the longest running theme song in sports now that we know of. And there's a lot of them that are out there, but nothing has had the staying power this has. So it's a pretty magical thing for all those elements to come together.
So when April comes around, or you're watching even the Super Bowl all the way through the NCAA basketball tournament,
that's right.
You start hearing that song.
Mm-hmm.
So you and your brothers, Quinn and Dylan,
yep.
When you guys are hearing that, what goes through your mind, or what kind of emotions come up for you guys?
The first thing I say out loud, because I noticed it during the Super Bowl, that they already give you a little teaser. For me, it's if you want to say, unofficial start of spring, to me, it tells me, here comes spring. If you hear that song, I just associate it so strongly with the springtime. But it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. It's an honor, to have that. I know it's like a legacy part of the family now that we got to keep going. And I love that you wanted to hear the story and that people ask about it. Most people don't realize, even now, that he wrote this piece of music. That's still brand new information, even to people I've known for a long time. But yeah, it's definitely a wonderful experience to hear it every spring. But it definitely reminds me that springtime's coming. And in the past, it meant every Masters Sunday we'd be sitting down to watch it together. So a lot of good memories.
No doubt. So unfortunately, your dad passed last year, but you told me the great story about Jim Nantz from CBS reaching out to you. What was that conversation like? How did that go? And do you remember when that occurred?
Yes. So it was a Friday afternoon. I was at a wedding, which is an interesting time for a wedding. Yep. And I had just been speaking with a friend of mine at work about Jim Nantz and the broadcast. And this would be the first one that we would have that I wouldn't get to watch with my dad. And so we had talked about it. And in the middle of the wedding, I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, and I just silenced it. And then I quickly looked down after the ceremony, because it gives you the dictation on the voicemail. And it says, "This is Jim Nantz from CBS." So I was like, man, my buddy's playing a joke on me. I was like, but hold on. I was like, just in case, let me listen to this. So I step out, I listened to it, and it was beautiful. He said it was Jim Nantz. A long overdue phone call, as he said. Wanted to call and just speak for a minute about the upcoming event and how he's hearing the melody in his head and he's having a lot of these emotions coming into the event. I thought that was really nice that he wanted to call and speak about that. And so I called him right back, and we talked for 20 minutes. I told him how important every Masters Sunday was and how much I appreciate him taking the time. And my brothers and I had reached out to any producer or email we could find at CBS, trying to make sure that they did some type of in memoriam or gave some small spotlight if possible. So we were hoping that would happen. And when Jim called and then he confirmed that he would be mentioning it himself, I was like, that doesn't get much better than that. I know that would have made Dad so proud that Jim would mention him. And I want to say it was maybe close to, or as they got to the 18th hole at the end of the broadcast, he took a moment to talk about the background on the song and that this year we honor him. He mentioned Frank Cherkinian in the broadcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really nice and wonderful thing of him to reach out, and even invited us over to his house to share some more stories. never realized this whole time he lives right here in Nashville.
There you go.
So yeah, so we've got to put that together still. But yeah, it was really nice to speak with him about it. And the line that he said that really stood out was, "My words and your father's music have been intertwined for decades."
Yep.
And I said, they sure have. We got to keep it going.
He's just as emotional about Augusta as you are here. In his backyard, in his house at Pebble Beach, he's got a replica of a hole from there.
Really?
Yeah. And he's every year on the Wednesday before the tournament, he takes a walk down to Amen Corner in the afternoon, because the big golf course is closed for the par 3 contest. So he walks down there and goes up toward Hogan Bridge and Nelson Bridge and so forth like that. It's his sort of his ritual to go do that. So he's very emotionally invested in that. So that's cool that he called you and reached out to do that. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Let me cite something here. I'm not going to read all the lyrics because it's pretty long. It starts out, "Springtime in the Valley on Magnolia Lane is Augusta National and the master of the game. Who wear that green coat on Sunday afternoon? Who will walk that 18th fairway singing this tune?" So that's the lead in that gets you set up, which is really neat. I think it would be fantastic if at some point in time that we can try to do this here, but they would play some of the lyrics or show some of the lyrics, because it really takes you deeper into that song. It's pretty neat. So
it does.
Since you're in the music business with Pearl Drums, and I guess, is Dylan also in the music business?
Dylan's a songwriter, singer, and my older brother Quinn has been, for decades, been here in the business as well.
So you guys know how this works. When a song is written and has gotten copyright status or music rights or whatever, like, what's the standard on how that works?
It's fun you mention that, because Dad having songs that were part of albums and were part of being an artist or signed or unsigned, it's a very different situation, because you have a lot of companies like BMI and ASCAP and CSAC that are overlooking the royalties and making sure musicians, producers, everybody's getting paid for them. And so this one was copywritten, but I believe at the time it was almost just like a handshake agreement that, hey, let's try this out. Let's see if it works. So there is no contract assigned or set up specifically for it. It was just a yearly negotiation that happened between Dad and somebody. I'm not sure if it was at CBS, I think, for a while. And that would change hands every few years. It'd be someone else would call him up. But it just became a yearly negotiation to keep using Augusta. And we wanted to make sure that we solidified that. So we recently have moved it to a music placement, I guess you would say. They oversee various media productions. But yeah, it's very unusual in that we don't have it set up like any of his other songs that he's written, or really like any songs or copyrights that I've heard about. So it's very unique in that way.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because supposedly CBS operates on that annual basis also. Every year, they've been doing it since 1956, broadcasting it, but still that sort of hangs over your head in case they do something that Augusta National disapproves of. You're always realizing that you got to go into somewhat of a negotiation every year to go forward the following year. So that marries nicely with what you're talking about.
It's nice to hear that, because I always thought that was odd. I was like, they just call you every year and you just say, this is what it costs? And he's, yep. And they just send the check and they just use it as much as they want. That's
How about that? So did you go through that this year, or the group that you hired?
No, before his passing, we knew we needed to solidify a few different things. And that's when we moved it over to Pilot Music Business. But that was just a very recent thing, just to make sure they're overseeing it. Everything's being handled. So there's no more negotiations with us, but I would imagine someone still calls them every year from CBS and says, hey, we want to use this again. And they set it up that way. But yeah, that's just how it was always handled. And his lyrics, by the way, you were mentioning, he goes on to mention a lot of great players and moments. And he really wanted to update that. Maybe I probably realized after a while they weren't using the lyrics anymore. And some of them maybe felt dated. So especially after Tiger had his run, I'm going to write some new lyrics. So I believe he had written another verse or two that he wanted to go back and re-record with Mickelson and Woods and all this. And I thought that was pretty nice, but the instrumental piece has taken on a life of its own. It would be nice, like you said, I'd love for them to play at least some of that, the chorus, especially where he sings about Augusta, would be nice. But yeah, we never got the updated version with the current roster of champions.
You could add Scotty Scheffler to that. Maybe he'll pop up here at some point in time.
Yes. There are a lot of great names, a lot of great moments. Since it was written, that's 45 years ago. So a lot that we aren't covering in the song anymore.
No doubt. I know that 3 years ago, Masters.com released, you could download from Masters.com an hour plus of this song. It would just repeat.
Okay.
So you can imagine putting it, if you have a Masters theme party, you can put it on your phone and put it on an external speaker and just play that in the background on it.
Yeah.
It just keeps repeating, and that would get everybody in the mood. I know that I'm for my church here in Jacksonville, Florida, we're renovating our gym, and a film I was involved with called Loopers, the Caddy's Long Walk. We're going to show that on Monday the 9th. If this airs after that, it's fine, but still, I'm going to play that in the background when people come in. We're going to serve egg salad sandwiches and pimento cheese sandwiches and make it the whole Masters thing. But that's cool that you can actually hear that song repeatedly. And I know there's a version that your dad played later in his life with a group where he sang the song with playing guitar. I think it was acoustic.
Yeah. I have I think I have 2 performances that I recorded. I was doing some video work at the time, so I actually filmed him some of his last times he played on stage. And in those cases, it was just him and a guitar. So it's still beautiful to hear the song, but you need that piano part. You need those strings behind it to really feel it.
I know it. So there's one, I thought at some point in time over the years, somebody would come and your dad updated the lyrics, but the only different version I've heard of that, it's not much different. 3 years ago when EA Sports did the Masters video game again, they had a version that's a little more electronic than that. And it's done by Johnsy, who's done a lot of JONSI. He's done a lot of film work, but he took that and gave it a little more of an electronic version. So if folks out there have the EA Sports Masters video game, you can unearth that and listen to that a little bit. But it sounds very similar, not much different at all.
It's evolving. That's okay.
No doubt. So are you and your brothers golfers?
Not really. I do enjoy playing. My other brothers don't play golf, but I have off and on wanted to play more than I do. I've been out with Dad a bunch of times to play. First couple of years when my son was born, I had my dad over and we'd set up like a microphone stand with a little Masters flag at the end of the yard, and we'd chip and putt. And we've been to the course many times, but off and on. I'm the occasional golfer, if you will.
Okay. Have any of you 3 been to the Masters before?
Amazingly, no. None of us have made it. We talked about it, especially going with Dad, many times, and it didn't work out or something else came up. It's certainly at the top of a bucket list for me. So I will at some point get to go there. But no, surprisingly, we haven't been. I think the last time he was there was the late 80s, as far as I know. So yeah, he was there obviously quite a bit after 81. But has not been back there in a long time, and I have yet to make it back. Even though I've been to Augusta, I have not been to Augusta National yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's cool. But maybe for people in Augusta to know, what was your mother's maiden name so folks can figure out where her heritage?
Yeah, Sandra Williams was her name. And yeah, born in Augusta, lived there until they met. So
how about that?
Yeah, small town. And actually something cool I have behind me here, I've got a collection. I've got the original 45 that they had made, and he bought hundreds of them and drove around, had them in the back seat of his car for a long time, or the trunk, and they would just try and sell them occasionally, just little 45 recordings of Augusta. I've got a CD, I've got a tape from MCA that he used to have. It's, I think, got coffee stains on it. Masters flag and some gloves, stuff that they would send him occasionally, just like little packages like hats and stuff like that. But yeah, I had to put together a little collage of all the different medias that I've collected of just that song.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now that Jim Nantz has called you, you probably have his number in your cell phone, I suspect. So
I had to save it. Yeah.
That might be one to say, hey, Jim, me and my 2 brothers are interested in going at some point in time.
Yes.
That would be a great conduit to making that happen.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That was a great idea.
There you go. Jim, don't get mad at me for saying that he's.
I think he would probably be okay with that. He seemed pretty open to hanging out. So maybe after we catch up on some stories, I'll ask about some tickets, but we'll get to that.
I agree. Man, thanks for joining us. Any other memorabilia that you may have that is related to this song other than what you got on the wall? Do you have anything else that's tied into that?
Yeah, check this out. I put this in the background. I have to imagine this is from the 80s. Look at this old cup we've got. I've got very old school. I don't even drink out of it. I'm not sure what it's made of. But yeah, I do collect a few things here and there. I've got on my golf bag, obviously, I've got towels and hats and gloves and stuff like that. But all of the stuff around his song, I've got some sheet music as well. This company made for me, which is really nice, and inside that frame. And I get reached out to occasionally for weddings. People ask me if there's sheet music available or if they can use the song. I'm like, that's a beautiful song for a wedding too. I don't see a problem with that as long as it's in the springtime. I think that works well.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm always on the hunt to find more pieces of that and continue to honor it and hopefully make new fans every year when they hear it.
Cool. Well, this may inspire people who take a wheel around the piano that just go and play the song themselves. That would be
Sure.
fun to create that. I'm sure you and your brothers may have sat down at the piano before and gone through that on occasion, right?
A little bit, mostly guitar, because we're all at least can combine on guitar playing. But yeah, occasionally we will play a little bit of some dad songs, but just little pieces of it. It's hard to play the whole song without having him there to sing along with you.
Well,
So
I'm sure that's
just
most
some
of what
moments.
but the great thing to me is he's no longer with you, but then again, every time you hear the song, he is with you. So that's really
Absolutely. Yep. And that reminds me of him every time I hear it.
Yep, that's awesome. Fantastic. Here's another way amongst so many where folks can get involved with the Masters and stories they didn't know. I appreciate you being with us, Kyle. I'm glad we can tell this
Thank you.
story and bring your dad into this every spring so everybody will think of him and know that this song he recorded and the background on how it occurred and meeting your mom and everything is really quite an Augusta story. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
As we heard today from 3 different sources, music is the fabric of any community, whether it's the artist who grew up there or a continuing culture of musical influence or venues that excel at live performances. Augusta, Georgia has its own niche in that realm based on its musical heritage and the music associated with the Masters tournament. Today's guest revealed the backstory behind 2 iconic pieces of the Masters. Augusta, the song that you hear at the outset of every CBS Masters broadcast since 1981. You heard that via Kyle Loggins, the son of the late Dave Loggins. And the inspiration and mistake on the Amen Corner nickname is told by North Carolinian and veteran writer and photographer Bill Fields. Bill Fields also tells of growing up in Southern Pines, North Carolina, and how that fueled his career in golf, which led to terrific writing and photography, which I consider a form of music unto itself. Then there's Big Ed Turner, who we're calling an Augusta musicologist. His family has operated Turner keyboards on Washington Road near Augusta National for decades. Ed has his finger on the pulse of Augusta music, including a take on Augusta's godfather of soul, James Brown. So when you hear that familiar piano music on CBS to open Masters broadcasts, see someone try to tackle Amen Corner, or even recite the state song of Georgia, Georgia on My Mind, sung emotionally by Ray Charles, remember that music soothes the soul and has inspiration behind it that has us whistling or jamming out, whatever your musical genre you favor. As James Brown would say, get up off that thing and dance till you feel better. Enjoy the Masters.